Hello, friends. Hope this finds you all very well. Different parts of the world. I'm in Portugal now. Just had a lovely gathering with some friends in the neighborhood. And I just had such a wonderful epiphany moment. You know, you have those moments, right, when something suddenly clicks, like you've been hearing about it your whole life for years, year after year, but then that moment comes, it just like clicks and makes sense. So I had a moment like that just now, and on the subject of sacrifice, right? And how I was reflecting on how we all experience and we see in the world around us and the people that we know, we hear about, that there's something that comes out of us when we have to face challenging situations, right? That the greatest depths of the human spirit, most profound depths of our spirit, they come out in moments of difficulty, right? And there was, I'm remembering too, this talk, this famous Russian writer, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, he got out of he was like, he was in like prison camps in the Soviet Union, endured terrible suffering, and witnessed so many horrific things. And he, had to leave, eventually was able to leave, and he ended up taking shelter in the US. But then there was this talk he gave at Harvard University, it was around 1978, where he pretty much blasted American civilization of the day. You'd think he was, he'd be so happy to be in this opulent land of America, right? Land of the free. But it was the opposite, and he gave a very profound and, very strong, also very moving speech. And he expressed it, what I've just left, that's not desirable, but this isn't desirable either, and he like heavily critiqued the consumerist culture of modern America, losing its essence, as and persons losing their essence, right, as spiritual beings, and so on. It's an incredible talk, highly recommended. So he was speaking about this, right? There's a lack, we have all this freedom and everything at our fingertips, but we've lost our moral and spiritual integrity, right? In this culture of overconsumption, etc., right? So anyhow, I'm reflecting on this, right? Like how there's something that comes out of the human spirit when we face difficulty, when we face challenge. It's like you access something within you that you didn't know you had, right? And there's that expression, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? And so on, so many expressions like that. And then it suddenly just hit me that, why is that so? Because the nature of the soul is to give, to sacrifice, to dedicate, right? And so when we make that kind of movement, then we're accessing the true nature of our soul. And it may be on a just to a very light degree, but still you're coming closer to the nature of the soul, right? There's that expression we've heard, practice the hand to give, right? Even if you're just giving ashes, but practice the hand to give. There's this place where Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he says it very clearly, that the nature of the soul is to give. And so he says, and so when we're in the movement of giving, of dedication, of sacrifice, we're opening, we're expanding the resources of our soul. Our soul body will grow in the spirit of giving, right? And then he says, conversely, when we are in a spirit of exploitation, of taking or consuming, then it's like we're shrinking the soul, because that's opposite to the movement of the soul, right? So it's actually such a profound thing for us to get into that spirit of giving and sacrifice. Sacrifice is not a bad word, right? It's not a scary thing. It's actually the most noble, most noble, most glorious, and profound thing that we can do, right? In every sense. And that sacrifice can be expressed in different ways. There's the physical sacrifice that counts for something, right? And that expression, right? Practice the hand. Like anyhow, one way or another, like get into that movement of giving and sacrifice. But what's really needed is the ego sacrifice, right? And ultimately, on this spiritual journey, on this path of Krishna consciousness, we're being asked to sacrifice everything, down to our very conception of self, right? And that's something to think about, right? Like, how much do we identify with the things that surround us, our birth, our occupation, our social status. Like, we need to think about that, right? How much do we allow these things to define us, right? Because in the ultimate sacrifice, we're being asked to give up all of that and to embrace our true nature as Krishna Nitya Das, right? As eternal lovers and servants of the divine, Sri Krishna, the sweet, absolute, reality, the beautiful, right? So it's something to think about, right? Day by day. And the point is, right, that we can't jump into like all out sacrifice of every facet of our being immediately. But every day we can stretch a little bit, right? Every day we can make that little stretch, physically, mentally, spiritually, and most profoundly on the level of our ego, right? How can we stretch a little bit? There's a sweet spot, right? Not to overstretch and not to understretch, but there's a sweet spot. Like what? So we can think about that, because if we're not sacrificing something of ourselves, then we're stagnant, right? Our spiritual life is going to be dead. If we're really honest with ourselves, it's going to be dead. And so it's something to think about, right? We need to all be making some little stretch, right, in our daily practice. So anyhow, just wanted to share that while it was fresh. Haribol, Jai Shri Gurudev.